this computer. Hello, this is Cesar Alvarez. I'm here with Marston Parker. He's going to be showing us his backtesting tool called, which I already have forgotten, The Joys of Getting Older. But I'll bring it over to, send it over to Marston Parker, let him introduce himself and his tool, his new backtesting tool he's been working on for a while. Marston, why don't you go ahead?
Okay, hello. The name of the software I call RealTest, and I think it's because decades ago when I first started developing it, I was using a data service called RealTick, and probably it just became a derivative of that name, but I don't really remember. All right, let's see. We're going to get onto my screen here so I can show things, and I am going to show the screen that I'm on. Share. Okay, so I titled the presentation why I decided to write my own backtesting software, and I actually don't really have an answer for that, but I needed a title, so that's what I came up with. It just kind of evolved, really. I first was doing a systematic-ish kind of trading in 1998 with a trading partner. I don't know if any of you old timers are familiar with this, but IBD, they might even still have it, I don't know. But our trading system then was to get IBD, delivered to our house, my house, and look up the stocks with the most unusual volume the previous day. Look for ones that look like they had consolidated below a recent high, and basically buy it at the open and put on a target and a stop.
Well, I remember those days.
Worked pretty well in the late 90s. I mean, anything worked in the
late 90s.
I
would say throwing darts worked well in the late 90s.
Yeah, right. So we were doing that, and it occurred to me I just wanted to know if different exit rules would work better, because it was basically a semi-discretionary entry and a mechanical exit. So yeah, I got data. I actually still have all these icons here are really old versions of my backtesting software that I managed to find on my computer. I think this was the first one. So yeah, right. I had like CSV data. I either got it from Metastock or Telechart 2000. I can't remember which. I remember in either case, I remember I used to have to dial in with a modem and get the data. Right, and then this would be a text file listing our actual trades. And then I could put in different exit parameters and test them and see what the results would show up in this area here. I don't have the right data. I don't even remember what data format it used or have, so I can't actually demo it, but that was the very first backtesting thing I ever wrote, was for testing exits. And it basically just has evolved since there. I just would add things when I wanted to be able to test something else, I'd add it to the software. From the beginning, I was interested in basically portfolio level stock trading. The idea that you have a pretty broad universe of stocks, and you make some picks from that every day. They're probably quite different from the previous days. So there weren't very many backtesting programs in the late 90s. There was TradeStation and Metastock and maybe one or two others, and none of them did portfolio level backtesting. You could basically open a chart of one symbol and put some rules on it, and that was all you could do. So if I wanted to test a portfolio strategy, I had to build something myself. I think Ami Broker existed then, but they didn't even have the backtester yet.
Yeah, Ami Broker existed in the late 90s.
Yeah,
that's about when I started looking at it.
It was new.
I don't remember when they added the portfolio level stuff, whether that was from the beginning or not. Yeah.
I mean, it was basically a charting program originally when backtesting came along. Let's see, all right, this was a version where I first wanted to try to test our entry rules and make it mechanical, because my trading partner at the time, we would do that IBD thing and look at all the charts and say, yeah, I like this one, no, I don't like that one. And he seemed to have a lot of opinions about every chart, and I found the thing completely arbitrary. I couldn't see why the little nuance he was looking at had any influence on the probability of what would happen the next day, which I still think is actually the correct point of view. But so I started wanting to test making it mechanical, and this was the next version where yeah, it started to get a little more general, right? ASCII data, and I think these little tiny number fields are where you could say what columns things were in a CSV file, and yeah, and you could put some parameters about the breakout and so on, and when to enter, and starting to put some things in. But it was, it was still kind of hard coded to a particular trading strategy, not a general purpose backtesting tool by any means. Let's see, and then third version. Oh, right. So yeah, we were pretty much both using TC2000, the Worden Brothers product, in those years, and they had a primitive, pretty simplistic syntax for putting indicators on charts. They call it PCF, Personal Criteria Formulas.
Oh, I hated that, their thing. I never liked it.
Yeah, it was, there was very little you could do with it, but they didn't have any back testing in there, and they had a lot of users. So I figured, I'm going to support their syntax. So basically I wrote a parser for their syntax, and then in these fields here, you could type in a PCF entry condition and a PCF exit condition and a formula for your target and stop prices. So it started to become a little more generalized there. And then I started working harder on it. This is where it first became RealTest, I guess. I think we're still in late 1998 or early 99 here or something.
It's interesting to see how this is evolving. I actually like doing this.
Right. Oh yeah, so here you see, right, I guess this is an actual entry rule I had experimented with in the glorious PCF syntax there.
Yep.
And then, yeah, this is just a screen. I was trying to interact with it, but it's just a screenshot because I couldn't find the executable for this version. Yeah, so it was getting gradually more general, and clearly I was running into the limit of user interface within a single dialog box here. So then the next, let's see. I think that's the one I just had up. All right, so then we get, then I got, this became really the version I used from probably 99 to, I don't know, what is this? Well, this one was built in 2015, right? 99 till like 2016 was something roughly like this. And it became, I put in this kind of interface so there was more room for all the formulas, your candidates, picks, position size formula. And I was starting to expand the syntax, add a lot of things to, like they didn't have a round function and so on, and other things. And I even put in like breadth and your trading cost assumptions, slippage. I got a little carried away with having a different slippage field for every possible type of entry and exit, all this sort of stuff. And so this was basically the version that I used, and it was still based on this limited syntax. And also, it only had two strategies like Omni Broker, one long and one short.
Right.
So you could see the results of those. But it served me well. I mean, I made a living trading with this kind of strategy throughout the 2000s. And then, let's see. Yeah, this is basically the same thing. It's just kind of a newer version. This is actually, this one I actually have here in the systems window every, let's see. Wait, hold on. Yeah. Every actual strategy that I ran during this time period.
Oh, okay. Oh my gosh.
I can actually go back and say, oh, what was I running in 08? Oh, I was using this particular.
Right.
Right. At this version, this is a very convoluted syntax. Basically, I was using a hybrid data of 1-minute bars and daily bars, basically having rules based on the daily bar so far throughout the day. So, and those were coded in a DLL, so backtesting would be faster. And this just got to be extremely convoluted. But anyway, that was the previous version. Then in 2016, I had basically the worst period in my trading career in 2015 and early 2016, and I was not thinking I had to do something different and reaching out to people for advice. And somebody, a good friend, advised me to take my software and like really rewrite it or gut it and improve it and turn it into a product. So I worked pretty hard on that for a solid year, and came up with a much better version, which is what's now called RealTest. And so rather than these sort of dialog box form things, I mean, it still has these basic elements of a strategy, like the definition of a candidate, the definition of a daily pick, your limit price, and so on. But they're in these fields. So actually, so if I bring up a new thing, so it's the way I think of this now is it's not really a scripting language in that you can't write a for loop or an if statement or something. It's not a programming language, but it's a very robust formula syntax, and that you can use for all the parameters of a trading strategy. So if I just go strategy, and I use the same scintilla editor that OmniBroker uses. So like those are all the different parameters to a strategy. Entry rule would be the main one, and then you can just start typing your formula and whatever. I'll show you some sample scripts. But underneath, it's basically the same thing. The main difference is rather than just two strategies, you can have an unlimited number of strategies that each have a name. And each one will show its own equity curve plus the combined curve on the graph. So I'll get to that. Right, and then there are these different main sections of a script, like the import is where you define the import. I've got complete integration with Norgate, so I have the index constituency and everything.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah, I had written a hack so that I got Norgate data via OmniBroker, but I didn't want to require users to have OmniBroker. So but just a couple months ago, Richard at Norgate gave me access to the API, and I did a full integration. And if I ever decide to market this thing, he's ready to add it to the NDU as a supported thing. So this data section is pretty much, the way I think of this is like columns in Excel for each symbol. It's pretty much like you would use, arrays in OmniBroker. So each line I add here, like EMA X, this is going to calculate EMA C5 for every bar of every stock in the entire universe, and so on. And each one can refer to the ones above it. So you end up putting most of your definitions in the data section. And in fact, well, before I get to this though, I was going to start with a simpler. It's all the examples that it comes with. So this is kind of fun. So the very first sample someone sees when they use this is kind of the simplest possible. I can also import from Yahoo. So I say, okay, import your data, and then let's see. I don't like this feature, but I have it turned on at first. Just like, wait a minute. We do. Oh yeah. All right. I have the default settings, so this works out of the box. So anyway, that just shows your basic 200/50 crossover on SPY, which we noticed has dramatically failed recently after successfully avoiding drawdowns throughout the past. Now the way I do test results, when you run a test, the results end up, let's get rid of this line, in this results window, which is like the summary stats. And then you've got a graphs window where you can loop through all the different graphs. And this is all completely customizable. If I hit F9, so there's all the graphs that are available, and you can define them any way you want, add them any way you want. I have all these primitives, like for example, your equity curve by default includes overnight mark to market. If you don't want that, you go minus s dot m2m. All right, so each of these is like a daily series of stats from the back test as it's running. And then what's really cool is you can also refer to them within your test itself. So the back test can refer to its own stats as it's going quite easily. I haven't actually used that much. I mean, I've played with it, but I haven't found a very good use for it. But, so anyway, that's sort of the, oh, and then, so from this, so every test you run becomes a new line in this results window. And then you can look at the trade list, and then you can go to look at the chart for a trade and loop through all the trades. This is what drives me the nuts the most in Omni Brokers. It's too hard to loop through all your trades in a back test. And because, see, I took pains to line them up so that, you know, the entry and exit shows up in the same place.
God, I really wish that was so much easier in Omni Broker.
Yeah, and you can set like how many visible bars and how many bars after entry or exit. Actually, an interesting use of this is to go 0 bars after entry, and then you can kind of use it to practice discretionary trading.
Right.
Like, oh, I bought there. What do you think? Is that going to be a winner or a loser? Let's find out. Oh, yep. Interesting. You know, you can do that sort of thing.
Oh, that's really nice. I like that.
But yeah, I usually just leave it on like 10 bars after exit. Yeah, and you know, I actually coded this charting to be a little bit like Omni Brokers, but obviously nowhere near as good. But I stole some ideas like that. I did this, which I like, where you can just drag across a region to go in and then get.
Yeah, that's always a great thing. It's really funny. Some of these simple things you would think he would do, and he hasn't.
Yeah. Well, like you can hit A for show all, and then you can just go to, oh, I want to see that part. So
right.
That's how I like to navigate around the chart.
That's great.
And then there's, yeah, the indicators and the charts are defined in the chart section. Oh, right. Okay. So I'm showing the dividend in the upper pane. So I just got to show the upper pane right there, where SPY has dividends. Okay. But you know, it's not as general as Omni Brokers. I only have the 3 panes. You can put an indicator in the volume pane instead of volume if you want, and they can each be resized. But that's basically about it. But, you know, being the ultimate charting software was not my goal. I just wanted it to be good enough to be able to analyze your backtest.
Right.
So anyway, and then what is going on here? Oh, sorry, I just briefly confused myself. Actually, let me run a different example because it'll be better for showing this stuff. So this is a long, short mean reversion system that I include in my examples. Which, let me just run it. Yeah, now let's see, I actually can briefly explain this to you. Test settings. So I have this at the top of the screen, this control panel area where you say like what your data file and your date range. It's sort of like the top of the analysis window in Omni Broker. But I hardly ever use it because you can also put all that stuff in test settings instead. So yeah, let's see, did I import? I think I imported this yesterday. Let's find out. I'll just run the test and see what we got here. So I don't know if you can see the bottom, it's calculating 120 million formulas. Basically, it's calculating all these guys here for every bar of every stock, and then it's running the test. You know, Tomas claims he has the fastest backtester, but RealTest is way faster than Omni Broker, just for the record.
Yeah, I said that. Well, I don't know what your computer is, but that Russell 3000 test seems a little faster than what would be on my computer.
Yeah, but yeah, I think this is kind of funny because I wanted to include a mean reversion sample that actually had half decent results, and I think I probably built this strategy somewhere around here when I first was putting the samples together.
Right.
And I've just left it in, but whoops, hasn't done so well recently. Well, not as bad. Let's see, drawdowns. Yeah, it's up to about 34% drawdown now. So I probably wouldn't still be running it. Drawdown days. These are just the default stats that I have. And you can, if you want to see any particular strategy. Oh, and the other thing I often like is to see it sorted. So like short, long. Let's do a different one. Okay, so like daily results, for example, that's useful. You know, like if you have a
I like that.
If you have a day where your account was down 5%, you're like, ooh, that's awful. And then, but look in the back test, how often was that? Well, it's pretty rare, but it does happen.
Right.
Even worse days, so that's useful.
I like that graph. Might have to see if I can add something like that in Amy Broker.
Yeah, and you can, you know, rolling whatever.
Right.
You know, and it's really easy to add something else. I mean, like, let's say I wanted to look at, for instance, all right, let's add PF 100-day rolling profit factor. So that would be some what do I call it? Oh yeah, winning dollars 100 over lost dollars 100. Let's see if that works. Oh yeah, there you go.
Oh,
so
that's
there's
nice.
your 100-day rolling profit factor if you want to look at something like that. Or you could do whatever, you know, whatever, basically whatever you want to calculate. You can calculate.
I got a curious question. It's really, actually it's a detailed question. Just I'm curious on how you do it. So I notice you've got a long short strategy here, and then you're combining them. How are you deciding when to rebalance between the strategies?
Okay, well,
how is that controlled? I'm just curious.
Yeah, I will show you how that's controlled. That's a good question. So each, okay, let's get into the script structure a bit. So I have this concept called a template, which is just to avoid duplicating script lines, basically. See, so both the long and the short say they're using base, so they're using that base template. So, so then we have this variable called allocation, which for any given strategy, and you don't have to have it in the template. You can put different versions of it in each strategy, and that it determines or calculates how many dollars to allocate to that strategy, and it's recalculated every day.
Okay.
You know, so I mean, you could code it to use the same value for a month. You know, like if month is greater than the previous month, then do this, else do that, or whatever. You know, whatever you want it to do. And then the quantity formula determines the actual position size. So in this case, I'm using 10% of my total equity, and both in this example, both strategies, each strategy uses 100% of equity, because I'm totally fine with being 100% long and 100% short at the same time. And each one is using 10%, you know, because I have a numpause variable, which is defaulting to 10. And so the quantity, the position size, is the allocation divided by your number of positions. So it's 1/10 of your capital,
right,
divided by the fill price, because the quantity is in shares. And I call it quantity instead of shares because I also support futures testing, and in that case it's contracts, and I didn't want to call it shares or contracts, so I called it quantity. And then so now I actually, when I do back testing, I almost never see that with this formula here. It's compounding. I almost never use compounding. I like to do allocated start equity instead, and that way, you know, I'm basically putting $10,000 in every position. I always test on a 100K account, and I'm always putting 10K in every position for the entire back test, and then the results are much clearer to me when run that way. And RealTest will automatically it calculates the drawdown as a percentage of start equity if you don't compound, and as a percentage of peak equity if you do compound.
Right.
Is what makes sense. So that's what's going on with that. And oh yeah, there's an option too if you want. I have these little format codes here, which if you put that one in, yeah, you can show the equity that way with the other lines in front of it. I like to be able to see how the component strategies influence the whole equity curve.
No, I like that.
Most of the time, I just leave it on the other way I had it, where the combined equity is blue. I'm just used to that. When you have more than 2 strategies, you end up with different colors for each one, and you can set in here like what they are. You know,
right.
Click over there and go change the color, blah, blah, blah. So that's how that works. Now I was going to get into, oh yeah, the trade plots. So this is something, one thing I've done in developing RealTest is anytime I find myself having to copy and paste to Excel to graph things, I would say, okay, I'm going to code that instead.
Yep.
I mean, I love Excel, but I don't want to have to keep going there when I'm analyzing strategies.
Yeah, I understand what you mean.
So this was one thing I would always do in Excel is, I go open the trade list, copy to clipboard, open Excel, paste it in there, and then do whatever analysis, that sort of thing, which is, it's nice to be able to do that when you want to do that. But I'd much rather just go over here and go like that. So now I can see the long trades, short trades, combined trades. This is a histogram, and I know it should be vertical. I was just lazy because I have the dollars and the y-axis and all so I just reuse the same code. But
yeah, it makes it easier. You can still read it, you still understand it.
This is sort of like an equity curve, but it's trade by trade. TradeStation has this style of
oh yes, yeah,
of things. And you can put the linear regression line on there if you want. Monte Carlo, keep randomizing. And if you want, you can. What is it? Oh yeah, right. See the.
Oh, yep.
The actual bin, data for the Monte Carlo. Monte Carlo drawdowns. Yeah, this strategy has pretty much had the worst drawdown of most Monte Carlo runs. Oh, there's a worse one. Okay. Now this is another thing I started doing sometimes in Excel, where it's a little more sophisticated, but if you want to. So you could change this to formula and do some analysis. Like, let's say, for example, I don't know, yesterday's RSI2. Oh, the other thing I did versus OmniBroker, I hate that construct. I like the offset. I mean, to me, 1 bar ago is +1.
Yeah.
As in TradeStation. Basically, when I was designing the syntax, I took the things I liked from everything I've used and did a mishmash. But it's probably more like AFL than anything else.
Oh, is this taking the RSI of each trade of the previous day? Or sorry, RSI 2?
Yeah. What was RSI? So now, this, and it's grouping them into bins. So you got 172 trades per bin. So it's calculating basically the average expectancy of all your trades, where yesterday's RSI2 was at each of these values. So you can do some analysis like that. I tend to do this not so much on a back-tested strategy, but what I'll do is I'll run a test that has very loose parameters and generates like 1 million trades.
Oh yeah. No, I understand exactly what you're doing. Yeah, because I'll do something similar, but then I'll dump it into Excel.
Yeah,
well, that's really nice. That makes a lot of that analysis much quicker.
And then you can also do, it's a little, and similarly you can, see the actual values for each bin and so on if you want in the log window. I'll sometimes do, you can also do equal range, which is more useful. Like, okay, let's see what happens here. 1. So the problem with equal range is you get, you know, it looks like, oh, what's that huge bar? But it's probably one trade.
Right. It's just only a couple trades, so
right.
it's.
So yeah, when you look at the trade counts, obviously they're going to group near the middle. But there's sometimes when equal range is useful, like for example, month. I don't know. Does it work better in some months than other months?
Right.
Or, you know, day of the week or whatever. So that's there. And then I've got a little debug window where, yeah, for example, well, like here's the first thing. You just look at the data. So this shows not only the bar data, but it also shows all the things.
Oh yeah, I know what
that you calculated in your data section here.
Right.
So that makes it easy to look and see if your
right.
data section is defined correctly.
Oh, that's just nice. God, you got a lot of nice little features in here.
That's what happens when software keeps evolving and you put things in that you would find useful.
Oh yes, exactly.
To build software.
Yep.
And then here, you know, I can just type whatever formula I want on any, like if I think there's something wrong with an indicator or whatever on any given thing, and show evaluation, like, okay, that's exactly how it calculated a 20-day moving average right there.
Right.
You know, it's pretty simple, but it's just a useful place for to test out the syntax, and I don't have to do show evaluation, but you know, I don't know, see. Hey, it's true. What do you know?
Right.
But then you can also look at the stat stuff. Okay, so it'll give you a choice of all the tests in your current results window, and then you select a strategy, and then you can go to the same graph there. But you can also, no, I pressed the wrong button. See the stats, right? So this shows, you know, what is available internally. You have your daily equity drawdown, et cetera. These are all like the built-in things, all the built-in things you have that you can use in formulas within your results or graphs. And yeah, similarly for the results window, all the columns here are defined in this script. So you can totally customize your results window. Like Sharpe ratio, you can that's how I calculate it. You can calculate it any way you want.
Right. Yeah, there's multiple ways to do Sharpe ratio
or whatever. So
Matt, David, either one of you guys have any questions?
No questions. It's certainly an impressive tool.
Yeah, and yeah, you're all welcome to you know, install it and play with it if you want. It grabs data from Norgate quite easily, or from CSV, or from Yahoo. I need to work on the documentation a little more. I do have. You can press F1 to get a syntax reference, which I have internally all these tables that I use for you know, this pop-up help feature of Scintilla, and then I just wrote some C code that generates HTML so that we could have a syntax reference. Working on documentation is not really fun for me, but I need to do it. But anyway, this, you know, you can see what all the syntax things are, and that way it's not the best. I need to do a kind of a help engine thing that's a little more flexible, but there's that. And then there's, whoops, what else? The oh right, the user guide thing. Hang on. Oh, by the way, I decided to move the URL. I think I had /software, but now it's /RealTest. And this is still only to alpha 10, but I'm on alpha 11 now. I need to update it. But this is a fairly long document that describes the software in a lot of detail, and has a lot of screenshots. You know, what I recommend if anyone wants to try it is play with the software a bit and then skim through here. There's some interesting stuff in here. Like I've got a whole section on my philosophy of what you can assume from a daily bar about the order of things. Like actually, for example, let me close this, get it out of the way. What example was I going to show? Oh, right. I was going to show the trade list. Right. So, like it, you know, like it automatically will, if you have a strategy that enters on a limit order and you have more candidates than slots in a given day, it'll take the ones that actually would have triggered at the open first. And then you can say what order to assume for the others. So basically, I've handled every possible aspect of intraday assumptions on daily bars. And there's some settings you can apply to it as well. Actually, an interesting thing about entry order, I was going to show you all. Yeah, this is an actual, I've got my data section down below because I don't want my actual one of my current strategies saved for posterity. But this is kind of interesting. Okay, so what I'm going to do here is, see, I've got entry score random. So I'm going to run, okay, we're going to run 100 tests now. All right, the first one, it's got to calculate all the data things. That won't take more than a couple seconds. All right. So this is the exact same strategy. It's just a long, meaner version strategy from the start of this year with 100 iterations with a random entry score. Because there's been, this strategy rarely has too many candidates, but in the last 3 or 4 weeks, there have been some gap down days where it would have had hundreds.
Right.
And I actually only I take the top 40 by percent ATR. I want the 40 most volatile stocks. So recently, my least volatile stock has had like a 20% ATR, but that's a different topic. But so here's the results. So you can see the entry score assumption in this particular 3-week period has made a huge difference. It could be anywhere. And this is a 100K account, so basically anywhere from minus 12% to plus 20% just for this last 3-week. Or no, just for this year since the start of this year. So, you know, my actual results for this strategy are somewhere around, I think I'm slightly negative. So I didn't have one of the best luck, but actually I have a friend who runs a very similar but slightly different version, and he had one of the better ones. So there's a lot of randomness at different times.
Yes, people don't appreciate that.
Yeah, the drawdown, it's a similar sort of thing. Could be anywhere. Yeah, for some reason, you know, my return on this strategy was slightly negative, but my drawdown was one of the least severe ones. So I guess I got lucky in that aspect. But this is a thing where you can just loop through all the columns of the results window and after you've run an optimization and graph the results. So that was an interesting thing, because when I take that same strategy and I run it, I did this, for example, like 10/1/08 to 12/31/08. That was a pretty bad period, right?
Yep.
All right, so optimize. You can use the optimization dialog even if you don't have any parameters active for other things. Like, for example, you can say, I want to run the test separately for each year, because I like to do that. I like to look at the equity curve separately for each year. Now we'll just run 100 iterations of the thing. I mean, this I should have shown you before doing this strategy. Was running a little more slowly because there were a lot more stocks in the database in 2008 than there are now. I mean, let me show you how this one worked. If we just do like the start of 08 to the end of 08 and run a single test. So I've been confident to run this strategy now because like this is a long mean reversion strategy, and that's what it did in 08.
Right.
And it's extremely simple strategy too. It doesn't have any long-term trend filter or anything. It just filters for extremely high volatility. That's all it wants. It's the most volatile stocks on any given day. But this year,
this year, not so good.
well, that's a random one. Hold on. Look, I mean, it depends. What I usually use for entry score is this. I assume that the ones where the limit price is the farthest below tomorrow's open are the ones that are going to fill first. And this is actually, yeah, that's sort of closer, you know, just tooling along. And then of course it got wild. I mean, but if you do the other, let's do the random thing again. What did I do this time? Oh, right. Latest. There we go. All right. Let's put this back again. So now you can go through and kind of compare the different possible equity curves you would have gotten. That's what I typically do, compare the different drawdowns you would have gotten.
This is really nice.
I'll just show the year by year thing because I like to look at that too. Optimized by years, we don't need to do 100 iterations per year. And we want to actually take out the random entry score. All right.
Well, now you can see the yearly returns.
Yeah, 19, 2018, 2017, 2016, 2015, so on. You know, or if you wanted, before doing that, you could like sort by whatever. It's like, okay, let's look at the worst years first. Oh, 2014, 09, and so on.
All right. This is really nice, Marston. Oh my goodness, we've been going at 45 minutes. I didn't mean to take.
Yeah, well, I'll wrap it up now.
Okay.
But yeah, like, you know, anyone who's watching now or watches this video in the future, feel free to reach out to me if you want to use the software. I always enjoy having someone use it. You've done quite a bit here. Like I said, if I wasn't so entrenched in AmiBroker, I'd definitely be really tempted.
Yeah, there's a lot of features in here that are really nice.
Marston, I'm just curious, do you have an idea, rough magnitude of how much development time you've spent building this?
It's hard to say. I mean, over the couple of years when I've done this major rewrite, there were a couple of months when I was basically working full time on it. But you know, a lot of days I'm not working on it. But it's been evolving since 1998. I mean, so I must have put, you know, whatever, 2 or 3 person years of coding into it at least.
Right.
It's all completely written in C using the Win32 API. I don't even use, you know, formula expression and so on. I don't even use MFC or anything else. It's just
No, that'll just slow you down.
Which there have been many times when I've regretted that decision, but it's when I first started working on it, it's what I've been doing for the last 10 years of my career. So I just used what I knew and stayed there. Although when I built my automation software recently, I had been running automation out of Excel, and then I decided to write my own, and I used C#. It was like, wow, this is a lot easier. But it wouldn't be as fast.
Yep. All right. Any last questions for Marston? All right. First, I really appreciate you taking the time to share this with us. And if anybody wants to use it, you can reach out to me or reach out to Marston. Do you have you want to show the website so they can reach out to you?
Well, it's not really much of a website at the moment.
Just somewhere they could. Do you have a contact on that?
Right now, this is what my website looks like.
Oh, okay.
But then I have when someone does reach out to me and I decide I want them to use it, I send them here.
Okay.
There's a sort of a stub I threw together which could eventually evolve into a marketing site if I ever decide to market it. But anyway, you can download the software or the user guide or go to the script reference here at this URL. There is a password on the software installer, so you will need to contact me if you want to actually use it. I like to keep track of who's using it.
Oh, no, that's completely fine. I understand that.
Yeah.
All right. Any last questions, David or Matt, before we say thank you to Marston? I actually want to say thank you to him, taking the time.
My pleasure. Thank you for hosting it.
No other questions, but great presentation. Very nice piece of software.
Thanks, Matt.
Yeah, I have no questions, but having played with it a bit, but being nowhere near as sophisticated as any of you, it was very interesting just watching the presentation, how much more powerful it is than I even thought. So it's incredible.
Oh, fascinating.
Yeah, I mean, like all software, I mean, there's a huge ramp up time. The more complicated the software, the more powerful the software, the more ramp up time. But if I was starting from scratch, or somebody were coming to me saying, hey, I'm looking at something, I definitely would recommend this. Check somebody out over this, over AmiBroker, or potentially, compare it with AmiBroker. So I mean, there's definitely, like I said, a lot of good things I saw here.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, I mean, what I found is if someone's fluent in AmiBroker, they can pick up RealTest in a couple of hours.
Right.
Or even if somebody's, like really good at building Excel worksheets and writing cell formulas and so on, that level of ability. If somebody has never done either of those things, then they're going to stare at RealTest for many, many hours and never get anywhere.
Well, that's the same thing true with AmiBroker. Is you need some sort of programming-ish background to understand it and be able to do anything with it. I mean,
yeah. Sure. I mean, both Cesar and I have trained lots of people that to use AmiBroker that don't have programming backgrounds, and just getting people to understand the concept of what an array is, and then getting them used to the concept that you can perform operations on arrays as if they were single numbers in AmiBroker.
Right.
That alone is a huge hurdle for people. And there are still people that, even after training, just don't get it, and they keep falling back to writing loops.
Yeah, exactly. Right. I mean,
that's one tiny little piece of learning how to be proficient in AmiBroker and AFL.
I mean, I think this makes it a little clearer, but it still has the same problem. I mean, you have to basically visualize that you've just, brought in OHLC bars into Excel, and now you're adding columns to it. But doing that simultaneously to like 3,000 worksheets within a workbook.
Yep.
But anyway.
Well, I'm going to wrap this up. Thank you, everybody, for coming. Thank you, Marston, for giving the presentation. And everybody have a good day and stay safe and healthy out there.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks, everybody.
All right, bye.